Hey, I'm Matt. Welcome to my podcast, The Imagining, a time to explore the imagination, creativity, and mental health. All of the conversations I'm having form part of the research for my new book. I hope that you have the opportunity during this time to discover something new about yourself. Phil, my man, thank you so much for jumping on the old pod.
You're welcome.
It's
more than welcome.
A real privilege. I've been trying to pin you down since day dot.
I know. These ships that never meet in the night.
Exactly, yeah. And me and you, well, you've known me longer than I've known you, in the sense that you've been around probably at least surveying.
Yeah, because I'm cousins with your mum.
Yeah, surveying the area of periphery of my life.
I saw you coming along.
Oh, 28 years. I saw. Did you see me making an entry though?
No,
okay.
I wasn't privy to that information, all those views.
Nor do you want to be.
As far as I'm aware, there's no video either.
Yeah, exactly. We've all escaped. We've all escaped that traumatic thing. Now, I've got a whole host of areas and things that it would be interesting to explore with you.
Yeah, how long have you got?
Well, as long as we need. And my friend who I produce a podcast for says we'll carry on talking until I get bored.
Yeah.
So that's really my theory as well. We'll carry on talking.
Matt Cooper meets Phil Wilson, Series 1, Episode 1.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A whole separate thing. But the first thing that I would really love to pick up upon is probably the best answer to one of the questions that I send out before every podcast, and I get every guest that comes on this podcast to fill out this form. And I ask them, how do they define their imagination or the imagination, or however you interpret that question? And you gave one of the best answers I think I've ever heard, which is you define your imagination as a Salvador Dali painting in a puddle.
Yeah.
Would you care to elaborate?
It's crazy beyond crazy. There is so much noise going on in between my ears. Sometimes it's frustrating. I've had to find ways of dealing with it. And it's just a mess. I will go from one thought to another quicker than clicking a finger. And when that, I've never been asked that question before. And I started to think about it, and that is the only description I could come up with, the few words that I'm assuming that you needed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there'd have been a whole novel there of what's going on. And it is like that. I've got music, I've got hobbies, I've got family, I've got mental health, I've got physical health, I've got age, because I'm, cracking towards 65, which is still young, really. But it's still only 5 years from 70.
Yeah.
So there's all this going on in my head, and all I could, that's exactly how I could describe it as Salvador Dali's paintings are bonkers.
Yeah.
Full stop. But then you put it in a puddle, and that's how you're going to get my head.
That's a whole mishmash.
Yeah, it's a mishmash of stuff, and I've only recently started to sort it all out.
Right.
And it's been quite uncovering,
right,
really, of stuff that's going on there, and it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, I'm
sure we might.
Yeah, so I'm interested actually, because I think that one of the reasons I liked the answer so much is because it resonated so deeply with my own sense of what goes on between my ears, in the way that actually there is this chaoticness to the imagination that I have, to my mind, to everything that's going on inside of me. For you, it's hard because I don't want to place this on that definition, but for me, sometimes that's quite a painful experience to have an imagination like that. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, it does. And where I am at the moment, I don't know the name of the painting, but one of the most famous ones is that watch hanging over a branch. Well, you imagine that watch in a puddle. I've picked that watch up and I'm trying to clean it off.
Yeah.
So I'm getting one element of that painting at a time.
Yeah.
Out of the puddle, cleaning it up, trying to sort it out. And then once that's sorted out, put it to one side, and then perhaps deal with something else within that puddle, rather than looking at the whole thing. If you look at the whole thing as one collective, you will stay in bed.
Yeah.
Because I know from experience. Yeah. Especially during lockdown when all my work stopped, being a musician. I'm not saying I had the worst time. People had a lot worse times than me. but from my own personal experience, I stayed in bed.
Yeah.
I couldn't cope with the mess in that puddle.
Yeah.
So that's, I think it works fine. There's loads to do.
Yeah.
I managed to get the watch out. I'm
Yeah.
still cleaning it up. There's still a long way to go.
What is the watch that you're actively cleaning at the moment?
Mental health.
All right.
Because I think if that's not straight or straighter or understood, or I know the differences it's causing, I think that will affect everything else, both my personal life, the people close to me, Sarah and friends and family, and it's really, really, really fresh. I mean, going on the mental health thing, if we can dive straight into
for
there.
sure, please.
I'm a fan of podcasts. That's one of the reasons I'm here anyway. I listen to quite a few. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast that's put out by LBC, a gentleman called James O'Brien.
Right.
He's a presenter on LBC, and he's got a podcast called Full Disclosure, and he interviewed Chris Packham, the naturalist. Is that the right word? Naturalist, naturist. One of them takes their clothes off, one of them doesn't. I'm assuming that he's the one that doesn't take his clothes off. And I like Chris Packham. I met him at a show. He's a big punk fan, which I found quite surprising. He came to a show that I was on. I'm not in a punk band. I'm sure we'll cover that in a moment. And we had a chat, and he signed a book for Sarah, and he was lovely. So I listened to the podcast, and Chris Packham he's been diagnosed with ADHD. And I've already been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I'm on medication for it. I'm quite happy to talk about it. It's not a problem at all. So I listened to this podcast, and James O'Brien is fantastic at getting the best out of people. It's really, really, really clever how he does it. And Chris Packham was saying these things, and I was thinking, yeah, that's me. Oh, that's me. I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me as well. And I started thinking, this actually explains an awful lot.
Yeah.
I thought ADHD was something that naughty children had, and ADHD was shorthand for naughty. It's not. I understand it greater now, and I apologise for my initial thoughts of years and years ago. So I started to look into it a little bit, and I went on to, if I'm going to research something, especially medical, I'll always go onto a recognised website.
Yeah.
I won't ask Auntie Mabel on a Facebook page, because you get all called, that's okay, darling, eat carrots.
The cure to all ADHD.
You'll be absolutely fine. So I found the ADHD charity in the UK for adults. And it's a recognised charity. It's got a charity number, and it's got a big following. And they've also got a podcast, which I tuned into, had a listen. I listened to number one, and it talked about the diagnosis. And they said that on their website, they've got a form which you can download and fill in, which I did. And my score was incredibly high.
Right.
Now, normally when you're doing forms, you get a high score. That's generally a plus.
Yeah.
But in this, I don't think it was a plus as far as knowing I might have an issue that hadn't yet been diagnosed. But I thought of it as a plus, thinking it explains a lot. Perhaps we can start dealing with that.
Yeah.
But the first thing they said is, once you've done this, if you get, so much, or you're still worried, book an appointment with your GP. I did that. I booked one with the GP. This is how fresh the list is. I saw him on Tuesday, and we're now on Friday. And he was going to give me a form to fill in, but the form that the charity supplied was the same one that NHS use. And he looked at this, and it was sort of, we'll get you referred. So I'm just waiting for a referral letter.
Wow.
The downside on that is I've heard that it can be up to 4 years, when I will be nearly 70. So I'll be looking into that if there are ways. I'm sure there's ways of getting a diagnosis from another county, another National Health Service department, but what do they call them? The various hospitals around the country. It's got a name. A trust, from another trust, to try and speed that along. If not, I've been working all my life. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it'll be worth spending out on a private diagnosis.
Yeah, to figure it out.
Just to get the answer sooner, then I can start working on it.
Yeah.
I've already started I've got a journal next to me.
Yeah.
And one of the, again, I'm a big user of social media. I went onto YouTube, searched a couple of ADHD platforms on there, and looked at the ones with the highest reviews, the highest counts, highest everything, and started to watch them. A lot of them are female-based, which isn't a problem at all, but there's nothing specifically for men. So I had a really good look around, and eventually I found one. A lot of the traits and what's going on are the same, but menopause is different, or non-existent in men. And we haven't got the same issues they have. So it's not that I'm not interested in the female side. I certainly am. But I wanted to sort of go through any fog that was there, because I'm selfish. I want to deal with me, which I've found this podcast, and one of the things they said is to journal it. Set yourself not targets, not goals, but ambitions and things like that. And I write everything down. And one of the issues I've got is clutter. I'm terrible. I won't let Sarah sort my clutter out, because it's my clutter, and she's got enough to do looking after me as a musician and her own job without dealing with my clutter. So I've made a list of things I want to do, but then that brings it down to one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Not the whole picture in a puddle. Let's deal with the watch first. And that's how I'm dealing with it.
That's really wonderful to hear, actually, because I think that you're right, ADHD does get a bad rep, or has had a very bad rep for the last 20, 30 years, maybe even longer, in the sense that it's identified as the naughty kid trait. It's really interesting that in your situation, I'm sure there's plenty of situations around where you've reached, like, school is way behind you.
Way.
And in a sense, a formal diagnosis is not about you being able to operate through the schooling system. It's more about you learning about yourself in order to better manage yourself. Do you see, looking back, because your career and your working life has been, again, this kind of mishmash of wonderful, crazy, beautiful moments. You've played in all kinds of different bands, and you, even in COVID, you went from working in a pet store, and then you're back doing the band thing, and then you've done stuff in the business world. You've run music workshops. You've touched the mental health thing. You speak a lot into, through Sarah, the cancer community. There's a whole plethora of things. I'm assuming that one of the positives that maybe you've drawn out of the ADHD traits that you might be reconciling with yourself now is that you have been able to speak in so many different things. Would you say that's one of the best positive traits of the ADHD?
Yeah, because I will give, if I hit on a subject, I'm in.
Yeah.
and it's in. I've got loads of examples I've written down here. I mean, for instance, when COVID hit, theatres closed, arenas closed.
And pre-COVID, what were you doing in relation to? So you were actively.
I was doing 130 shows a year in theatres and arenas, playing percussion for some shows, playing drums for other shows, and it just stopped. Stopped. Gone. And like a lot of people, it affected me, and I hid away in bed. I just absolutely hid away in bed. There's nothing I could do. Didn't want to get up, didn't want to face the world, didn't want to face jobs, didn't want to face washing up, didn't want to face anything. Sarah, unbelievably, I would have left me. I would have been gone. She's unbelievable. And I started to watch short videos on YouTube. Now, YouTube is a great platform for finding out stuff. It's also a great platform for finding out nonsense. And the first thing I got into was shoe cleaning. I mean, that's random. I mean, if I said to you, name me 100 things I got into during COVID, shoe cleaning. But not just interested in it, I started buying not just polish, but the best gels, the best waxes, the best cloths. Spent 25 quid on a brush. I mean, and I brought back to life one pair of shoes and packed it all away. Then I got on to something else. You know, we've got Airfix models. I bought an Airfix Spitfire, which is about £7 or £8.
Yeah.
I spent nearly £90 on paints, brushes, glues, sandpaper, tools, workstation.
Yeah.
Made one model. Right, well, now what should we do?
We're done. Yeah,
we're done.
Move on from that. That was
Move on
great.
from that.
I loved it, and as someone that relates to it in a lot of ways, loved it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
It's not for absence of lack of loving it that you then move on. It's just kind of like, that was great. I enjoyed the process of learning and trying something different, and it's been beautiful. But
I mean, the process of learning just reminded me of what must be 30, 40 years ago. When I was in 1979, I qualified as a private pilot. I got a pilot's license, right? But I enjoyed the learning.
Yeah.
So I qualified as a pilot. They said, "Congratulations, you've qualified." I'm like twiddling my thumbs.
Yeah.
It's right. Okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, done now.
Oh, we can go for a flight over Leeds Castle. Oh, big deal. Done that 20 times. Oh, you can't go to Tower Bridge now because the city airport's open and you can't get anywhere near there. Oh, you couldn't share the cost with people because that was taxing. When I was doing it, that was illegal to follow people and share the cost. So I thought, well, I'll do some more learning. So I got a night rating. Then I got the basic instrument rating, known as an IMC rating.
Yeah.
And when they finished, okay, I've got an IMC rating, which means I'm going to fly in bad weather. What don't I want to do is fly in bad weather. That was a waste of time.
But actually, and we'll return back to what you were saying in a second. But whenever I've spoken to my dad about trying to piece together what I was like as a child, in the hope that I might learn something about me now. And he pointed out something that seems relatively obvious to me now, but he basically said, you've always been more interested in learning new things than the actual thing that you're learning, in a sense. He was like, you like the mountain to climb, you appreciate the view, and then you're like, oh, look, there's another mountain.
Yeah.
And when I look now at my life and I go, you know, I'm writing a book, I make films, I design websites, I speak on stages, I run a podcast, I have a marketing job, and there's all of these things, all of these different skills. I guess in some way people might say, well, they're quite closely related, so maybe I do have a niche within what I enjoy learning, but I've always enjoyed the process of figuring out how to do something, starting from zero and going, I have no idea how to do this, and I'm right at the bottom of the mountain, but boy, would I love to be at the top. I've always appreciated that much more than when I've been at the top of the mountain and gone, well, I know how to do that now.
Done that, move on, next.
I'm a bit bored of that now. Yeah. Let's try something else. Inevitably, it's useful because when it then comes around 4 years later and you're like, you know what would be really useful to know how to do right now would be, you know how to take photos. And then you're like, oh, I climbed that mountain 4 years ago. I could probably do that. So that process of learning is something that's been profoundly important to me in the sense that I've actually enjoyed the learning more than the doing.
I'll give a really simple example of how learning can come and go so quickly. On a holiday last year, I met a magician, and I went to a workshop, and he showed me this trick. Right, it's hysterical. But it amazed me. It was a little card trick, and once he showed me it, I was amazed by it.
You were hooked.
And I can do that trick, but I won't show anyone because I know how it's done. I think they know how it's done.
Yeah.
So learning how that trick works has ruined that trick for me because I won't even show anybody.
Yeah. So you just it was a kind of like the mystery's gone.
That's it. Move on.
And now move on.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. It's the pull of the mystery, the curiousness, and I think that is one of the more positive traits of someone that would identify with ADHD or has been, I don't know if diagnosed is the right word for ADHD, but it might be. Yeah,
they do. Yeah, I think that's what they refer to as a diagnosis.
As a diagnosis. One of the obvious positive traits is kind of an insatiable curiosity of everything. And once something kind of sparks, it's like, go. And obviously there's dangers within that as well, because you're like, oh, hold on a sec, I was meant to concentrate on this really important thing that's really important, and it's maybe not a good idea to kind of just
get me started
follow that over there.
Yeah.
And that's obviously that comes at a cost, but the beauty of it. So actually it's this will speak into it. I'm writing a chapter about attention in the book, and I wrote this story about these tiny people.
I can't wait to hear some of your stories you'll be talking about.
And there's these tiny people, and they discovered this tea that they love. It's this type of tea, and it's made of all of these different really strange ingredients, and you have to boil it at exactly the right temperature, something between, I can't remember the exact words that I wrote, but kind of between the temperature of sun on a rock and lightning hitting the ground. It's a very precise temperature which you have to do it, otherwise it tastes grainy instead of smooth. And there's always a very complicated thing to do, but they've only ever been able to make it once because they don't remember how to make it because they weren't paying enough attention to the process. And by the time they had finished with doing it, they were moving on to the next thing. So they were never paying enough attention in the moment because they were so curious about the next thing. But they've fallen in love with the tea. And they're like, oh, actually that thing that we do really love when the dust settles and when COVID comes and we're rendered like pretty unable and we're knocked down and we're like, you know what I really just love is one of them cups of teas. They've forgotten because their attention, their low tension had got the better of them. And I guess like one of the big things to speak into ADHD is the learning how to pay attention and build a consistency to some things in your life so that you can repeat them and they become positive habitual practices in your life, can be really grounding when you need it. What for you would you say are them habitual practices, them rhythms that you work really hard to try and stick with, or you might be in that discovery process now?
I'm in a discovery process. I mean, when I'm working, everything is precise. I've got lists on top of lists of flight cases and everything. One of the hobbies I fell onto a year ago, and I've been there a year, is model railways. And that's really leveled out. I think that's part of polishing off the watch.
Right.
Really. I've sort of liked trains for a while, Yes, I'm going to be a 70-year-old in his garden shed. Bringing the grandchildren.
You're painting a picture of it. I mean, when I was growing up, I was like, Uncle Phil's a rock star, and now he's playing with trains.
Rod Stewart's got a train set, so I'm in good company. And I started going to a model railway club in Chatham, at Chatham Dockyard, under the ropery. I've been going a year now, and it is fantastic. The main reason is when you go in there and you close the door behind you, you shut the big bad world outside. And you're speaking to like-minded people. I do some modelling in there, do some painting in there. I'm building a model railway set in a guitar case, which we may or may not touch on why later on. Again, it's all to do with mental health. And you think about one thing while you're there, and it's beautiful. Because there's a library, you can sit in the library with other gentlemen and ladies from the age of 18 up, and it does not stop. And you might not even touch a train all night, but you go out there relaxed and fulfilled because you've had a nice conversation, you met nice people, you've had a bit of a giggle, you watch people. I mean, the club circuit is huge. It's a massive circuit. It's a beautiful place. You have to come down one day. I'll show you around. Yeah. And I've gone every single Tuesday in a year, apart from the ones when I've been on holiday or working away. And that's the first thing I've done in years. That's a regular thing like that. Yeah. I would start something, give it up. I started playing guitar a few years ago. I was going to an open mic night. Someone started videoing me, and I asked them very nicely, can you not video? Because this is a little pub. I'm only doing this open mic for 10 people in this pub. And the reply was, well, I'm allowed to. I said, well, it's not a case of being allowed to. Yeah. So I'd rather you didn't. Yeah. And I put the guitar away. And that was, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
I only got out last week. Not last month. I started
Yeah.
going to a guitar club in Arwade.
So sad. Wow. But that
Things just turn me off that quickly. And I think that's one of the traits I'll get in something. And I've described it in the past with Sarah as having a very, very long plank of wood with the finest of grooves down the middle, and I'm rolling a marble down that groove.
Yeah.
If that plank of wood gets the slightest tap,
yeah.
the ball's gone, and that's me. I'm gone.
Done.
I was having anger issues, self-harming, 10 years ago, and we've got over that. You deal with things as they come along in your own way. My way was keeping my nails short because that was my tool of choice. I'd scratch myself horrendously. I'd be in a right old pickle, but tiny things would set me off. So I had the treatment for that, and that's now on the mend. It's great. But I once described it as if I was going on a motorway and I saw a multiple car accident. There was a coach for the school children. I would get out the car. I would call the police. I would stop traffic. I would help. I would administer first aid. I would, help out. If I broke a pencil when I was doing a drawing, all hell would break loose. And I have launched a microwave in the past over something really silly, like I dropped a teaspoon or something. But that hasn't happened for quite some years, and that's thanks to Sarah. And dragging me along, kicking and screaming for treatment. And mental health treatment, as I'm sure you know, is hard to come by.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest frustrations, was you would wait 3 or 4 months between consultations.
Yeah.
And then the counsellor would change, and you've got to go to the story again. And one of them was, what sort of things frustrate you? Filling in forms drive me insane, especially on a weekly basis. Because if I miss one form, I can't do the rest because I missed one. And they said, "Oh, okay, can you fill this form in to explain that?" No, I referred the honourable lady to the answer I gave a few moments ago. It doesn't work. So it's you're fighting everything.
Yeah,
but
it seems to me what's really interesting, and it's a theme that I think comes up time and time again. And there are two things that you've pointed out that have been really positive and ultimately some of the most helpful for you. One is relationships. And two is small meditative practices that kind of ground you. And me and you both can reconcile with having wives that are an island in a stormy ocean.
Absolutely.
That's how I describe Jess for me, is that there is a sense of Jess is character. I don't want to put undue pressure on my wife. I don't expect her to be the anchor to my soul all day, every day, forever, because that's an unfair burden. And
you'll be there for her too.
But yeah, exactly. But she definitely does her gift, her greatest of gifts to me, and I'm forever indebted in a way to that, is this sense of stillness amongst an ocean. And I guess me and you are indebted in that way, where we're eternally lucky that we have, I'm going to be really honest with myself, stumbled upon someone that's so awesome. I don't quite know if I deserve her or whatever, but certainly there is a deliberateness on my behalf and your behalf of curating relationships. It takes time in order to go, well, I can be all of these creative things. I can be the rock star. I can go and do the interesting things.
I hit stuff.
You hit stuff. Well, I'm going to call you a rock star, okay? A rock star. I can do all of them things, but unless I really curate a relationship with an individual, in our situations, our spouses or family or a friend or whoever it is, the whole thing goes kaput. Do you agree?
Yeah. I wouldn't be a professional musician without Sarah. It was because I never had any confidence at all. I didn't think I was good enough. Didn't have talent. Was bullied at school. I had a stammer at school. Bullied at school. Always spoken down to. So I didn't have that self-belief. But she gave that to me, and that gave me the courage to go for my first theatre tour, and I got it straight away.
Wow.
And I thought, damn.
Yeah, I was like,
I'd known 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that I had the ability to play at that level.
Yeah.
But then once you're at that level, you've got to keep getting better.
Yeah.
You know, you're only as good as your last note. But I like that kind of pressure musically. I like that kind of pressure. But I've had moments, you know, of negativity when I've been, you know, playing. You know, once I was at a show in Glasgow and I nearly pushed my whole rig over, and it wasn't for the lighting engineer wrapping his arms around me and pulling me off the stage during the sound check. It would have been a whole different matter. So you can flip anytime.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't understand. I'm sure people are getting better now because more people, especially well-known people, are coming out explaining about their mental health. You know, Stephen Fry suffers from bipolar, and I mean, damn good company.
Yeah.
People like that, you know, bring it on. But I've come off stage after playing to 3,000 people, sat in a corner and cried. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Just had the most phenomenal night. You know, the thing that started the repair for my for anxiety, anger, and all that kind of stuff was talking to people, not hiding it. And it came to light one day. I was on tour, and we were doing a gig away from the normal tour. So the tour bus and all the equipment had gone to somewhere else, and we were doing this show it was either Lancaster or Morecambe, somewhere up north, and we were given hire gear to put in. Now, I've got a certain requirement.
Yeah.
You know, I won't refuse to play if it comes below that, but you want things to be certain. And this children's drum kit had been put in with broken heads and broken cymbals.
Yeah, that doesn't mean.
And I was starting, and it was a Sunday, and I was starting to repair it, and I was getting more and more frustrated. And the tour manager, our agent was a lady called Abby Carter, and I always referred to her as Carter. I was on my hands and knees behind this bass drum trying to get the pedal to work, and a cup of tea appeared under my nose. It was the tour manager, and he said, "Go into a dark room, have this. Carter thinks you're about to kill somebody." But if I hadn't spoken to somebody about it, but I took Abby to one side probably weeks and weeks before, probably even months before that. So just keep friends, real friends will keep an eye on you.
Yeah.
And she did, and she could probably see my heckles getting up. And we ended up finding a shopkeeper local to the town, and he opened up his shop and he got a drum kit out for me.
Yeah.
You know.
But there's something so the gift of saying pause, have a cup of tea,
go away. Yeah, in a dark room.
But it's so underestimated.
You have to talk to people. You have to let people know. And people if anybody says, "Oh, you know, it's all in the mind," then that's the wrong person to speak to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go and speak to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you definitely need that support. You know, and I've again, thanks Sarah, going back to the lockdown thing. My days started at 4:00 in the afternoon. I was in bed till 4. Sarah got me into a routine of going down to watch Tipping Point at 4:00. Then I think it was The Chase, and then after that we'd watch Richmond Osman's House of Games, just game shows.
Yeah.
And then after the last game show at 6:30, I'd be watching the clock for 10:00, so I can go back to bed again. But at least she started a routine.
Yeah.
And then one day she came up to me, and it was a Thursday, and she said that Pets at Home were looking for someone for I think a 10 or 12 week contract because they were a vital business. So they were open during COVID. She said, "You used to do retail. Why didn't you have a go for it?" I said, "They're not going to want me, you know. I think the only place I'd get a job is something like B&Q, you know, in a bib and brace, and you know, yes, the glue's over there, madam, you know." But I filled in the form online. They phoned me up the very same day into the branch on the Friday for the interview. Monday morning started work. And having that regular thing to get up and go for is brilliant.
Yeah.
Which I'm still struggling to do for my own stuff at home, hence the journal. But one of the first things I remember from working at Pets at Home, apart from how brilliant they are with animals and how great the staff are to animals, I was on my hands and knees cleaning up dog mess. It might have been a Labrador. It was a big dog.
It was a big dog.
Yeah, it was a big dog. And probably not very well dog on the way home from the vet or something. And I just started giggling to myself, thinking, you know, this time last year I was playing the O2. I'm wiping up this. I thought, oh, well, But I ended up spending just over 6 months there. They wanted me to stay on. So I made an impact. I was passing my previous retail training onto the younger staff in there and all that kind of helping out where I could. But I didn't want to start as a general member of staff.
Yeah.
If I was going to work for Pets at Home full time, I would go on a management acceleration course because I think I've got the ability. But the finance wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I understand their reasoning. They have their plan and their routines and schemes, and the money was a lot worse than hitting stuff. So when the opportunity came to hit stuff, I left, and then the first 5 gigs were cancelled because the brass section got COVID. I could have had another week in the pet shop cuddling rabbits, So it's just how it goes. But things are leveling out a lot better now.
Yeah.
Especially in the last week, since I know that actually the reason I'm doing this is because there's an ADHD thing there, and it explains an awful lot.
Yeah. And there's something in finding comfort in someone saying you're not alone. And I guess that's what diagnosis does.
Yeah.
It says, don't worry. We've seen this before.
Other people. It's
There's
a bit
other
like
people.
that post office scandal that's going around. Everyone was told they were on their own.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. And talking to people, I think, is the best thing to do. And close friends and family, you can have a really good chat with them.
Yeah.
Even a laugh at my own expense. I'm the first one to laugh at my own expense because it breaks the ice. Because sometimes people are afraid to mention. So I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and his wife had a very upsetting mental period, and she had to go to hospital for 3 months. And she's still in recovery, and it's slow moving. And he was saying that she was staying in bed till midday, and we went out together on the way home. I said, you said your wife's staying in bed till midday. He said, yeah. I said, she's a lightweight. Yeah. So instantly put a humorous on, and he roared with laughter. Because I get where she's at.
Yeah.
And we sort of share information. It's not top trumps. Share information and make it a talkable subject, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Not negotiable, but talkable subject. Something you can freely talk about with friends, relatives, and everyone. And people don't say, "Oh, watch that Phil bloke, he's a bit bonkers." They won't say that anymore because people know that it's quite a serious condition to be in. I've never missed a gig because of it. I have played not in a very good state.
Yeah.
And I've let people know. We class it as baboons, Sarah and I. They said, you may not remember because of your age, but I'm sure you've heard of a boxer called Frank Bruno.
Yes.
He just won a tournament. It might have been the European Championship, and the boxing commentator was always a guy called Harry Carpenter, I believe. And he said to Frank Bruno, "How are you feeling, Frank?" And he said, "Harry, I'm feeling like 10 baboons." Right. So for me, 10 baboons is as high as you can get.
Okay.
So Sarah will always say to me, "How many baboons are you on today?"
Right. So 10 is the best. 10 is
I'm not allowed to
get
to 10 baboons. I can't get to 10 baboons.
But if you've got no baboons,
I get to 8 and 9.
Okay.
No baboons, I stay in bed.
Okay. No baboons.
3 or 5 is about right.
Okay.
10 baboons, I get what I call a happy hangover.
Okay. And that there's a
the
crash
following day,
coming,
Sarah calls it bouncing on a trampoline and hitting your head on the ceiling.
Yeah.
If you get too many baboons, you go crazy.
Okay.
And the next day, you get a happy hangover.
So it's equally
and
unregulated.
I'm as flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
So we just try and keep an eye on the baboons.
Because I guess one of the structural problems of being a professional musician or operating in any career where there is very high reward moments. For instance, I don't know what you would class as the most inverted commas moment, the best, most brilliant moment in the eyes of the world moment of playing music.
For me, I've got one.
What is it?
It was last September. I'm currently touring with a band called T-Rexacy. They're a T-Rex tribute show. I use the word tribute very, very loosely. There's some brilliant tribute bands.
Yeah.
I really believe that T-Rex should take it to the next level. Right. They are phenomenal. They did a show we did a show last September at the Shepherd's Bush Empire.
Right.
It was a Mark Bolan anniversary concert. Now, Tony Visconti was the producer for Mark Bolan, T-Rex. He came over to conduct a string section on that show. Holly Johnson was on the gig singing a couple of T-Rex songs. Mark Ullman was on the gig singing a couple of T-Rex songs.
Yeah.
And I was I should have written these names down, but there was quite a few other people on this show, and it was sold out, and it was phenomenal. And I got a smile and a thumbs up from Tony Visconti.
Right.
At the end of the show. And if the world had finished then, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of the best concerts I've seen.
Yeah.
And I was part of it.
Yeah.
And it was just, even now I'm getting shivers.
Just thinking about
I would say the
how
hair on the back of
awesome
my
it
neck
was.
standing up, but I haven't got any.
Yeah.
You know, but it was just out of this world. That
Yeah.
feeling of, you know, if Visconti, who produced the songs in the first place, was happy with my playing,
Yeah.
then life is good.
And the reason I draw attention to it, and thank you for explaining what it was for you, is that in careers like that, you can have a day like that, and then the following day.
It can all go belly up, yeah.
And I guess inherently that's one of the challenges of an overtly creative, or not overtly creative, an overtly, I don't know what you would call it.
I'll give you a belly up, shall I?
Yeah.
I'll give you a belly up. I was asked to go and play drums on a show. I won't give the name of the act, that'll be unfair. But I had 6-8 weeks notice. I sent me some emails with the tracks recorded from a live show that they did. I charted it out, wrote the parts out, practiced it, learnt it, practiced it, learnt it. You know, yeah, I'm happy with this. This is going to be a cracker. In the sound check, the guy running the band said, okay, we'll do so-and-so a track. So we started it. He started the guitar and I was waiting for the moment to go. He said, why haven't you started? I said, well, drums don't come in for 8 bars. Yes, they do. Well, not on the track that you sent me. Well, who sent you the wrong track then? Well, I don't know. Someone did.
Yeah.
And that resulted in a massive row in the sound check. And my head just fell apart. Absolutely. I could not play. I got through the gig. You know, the band got a standing ovation. But I did not play as well as I was. I didn't go out for tea afterwards, after the sound check, because I felt I had to learn everything over again from scratch. My confidence had been blown.
Yeah.
And I think it's the worst gig I've ever played. I didn't even get paid for it. I didn't invoice for it.
Right.
But the one thing, the massive learning from that is, if you get a live version that they've done, I check with the original recording.
Right.
And if there's a difference, I will contact.
You ask. Yeah, you make the call.
They make the call. I mean, I did that with the Stevie Wonder tribute show I worked. It was a tour, brass section, phenomenal band. I mean, off the scale players. And I got all the parts for the percussion. And there's like 8 staves, meaning I needed 8 hands to play some of that. So, well, no, I'm good, but there are limits, you know.
Yeah.
So I contacted the musical director, and he said, well, I don't know, speak to the person who charted it. So he gave me her number. I phoned her up and I said, these Stevie Wonder parts for this tour. Where did you get the charts from? She said, I recorded, it's from the Stevie Wonder Live in London DVD. Oh, okay. So I watched it, and there's 2 percussionists, and the brass section are playing percussion when they can, and so the backing vocalist, she wrote everything down.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We need another percussionist.
So I phoned the MD up and I said, this is the situation.
Yeah.
There's too many parts, X, Y, Z. You know, there's 2 percussionists. This is going on, that's going on. Do you trust me to produce a hybrid that the most dominant parts on the singles and album tracks come out, and I hold back the live stuff for reserve? Or if there's some live stuff that is more dominant than the recorded, I'll do the most dominant. And he said, yeah. So I had free reign. I still charted it out and had it exactly every night was the same.
Yeah.
But I learnt that from that row.
Yeah.
Because I would have had foot pedals everywhere trying to play all these 8 parts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like quick.
Been ballet dancing around foot pedals and you know, shakers strapped to me head and stuff. But just it's a learning curve, you know. But it's a shame it come from such a massive low.
Yeah.
But it's so any musicians listening to this, if you get something and you see a discrepancy between what they've sent you and an original recording, have that conversation.
Yeah.
It will save a row.
It will save a row.
It will save a night's wages as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it will save some. Now, I wonder whether you could. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to cover. What do you feel is the imparting wisdom that you would offer up? As it would be a big question to say over your life. What is the wisdom that you would wish to leave? Because I don't want to insinuate that you're about to die, but the question, I guess, is, you know, what's been the major learning for you of this journey that you've been on?
It's always the most recent thing. Don't be afraid to talk to people. Have that conversation, and that's across everything, both professionally. You know, will this tune be right? Is it not the same as the original? Have that conversation. I'm feeling a bit grotty in the head. I'm not feeling very well. What's causing it? Can I have a conversation with somebody? Have they noticed anything in my behaviour? You know, have that conversation. Good friends will help you. Good friends will put you in the right direction, and more importantly, they will stand by you. They will give you that hug when you need it. You know, I mean, I'm feeling close to tears now because this has been like a counselling session. You know, some of the things I've said out loud today for the first time.
Yeah. And
I'm really proud of that because I think that's done me some good. So, yeah, always talk to people. Have that conversation. Don't be afraid to ask. You know, please don't be afraid to ask because you can bottle it up. My mum had a fantastic saying. When shortly after my dad died, I'd get really upset and she used to say, better an empty house than a bad tenant. And that, I want that on my gravestone.
Yeah.
You know, it's better to have nothing there than a mashed up painting in a puddle.
Yeah.
You want a nice painting. You want a nice sunflower or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, I wish you all the best, and I offer my prayers for you as well in the excavating and the reordering and the reimagining of the chaos.
We start from now.
Puddle. We start from now. And
I've got the watch out. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to all those listening who have been moved by this conversation, I guess really both me and Phil would say, find someone that you can trust.
Absolutely.
Have a conversation. If you don't feel like there's someone you can trust that is a friend, then seek out professional support. There is someone out there that you can find that you can trust and you can have a conversation with. And we wish you all the best and the prayers in that journey wherever you are. And all that's left to do is say thank you so much.
Thank you. Brilliant.
It's been a real privilege.
Nice to have a chat.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Imagining. I hope that you've had the opportunity to discover something new about yourself. If you wouldn't mind and you enjoyed listening, then I would be really appreciative if you subscribed on whatever channel you're listening on.